All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, when you think of Georgetown Hoyas basketball, it should not take you that long to think of the name of Patrick Ewing. And for good reason, as Ewing is the greatest player in the history of that program, bar none. In Ewing's playing days at Georgetown, he helped the Hoyas reach three Final Fours, which included winning the program's only national championship in 1984. During Ewing's playing days at Georgetown, he was a three-time All-American as well as being a two-time Big East Player of the Year as the Hoya Destroyer made life tough for Georgetown opponents. Now, after Ewing's Hall of Fame playing career, he wanted to embark on a coaching career, which brought him back to his alma mater in 2017 after 15 years as an assistant coach at the NBA ranks. But unfortunately for Ewing in Georgetown, the results in his second time around there have not been what anyone expected. So far under Ewing, the Hoyas are only 73 and 94, and they're just 26 and 67 within the Big East. And Georgetown currently finds themselves in the mix of a 25 game losing streak within the Big East. Now, in 2019, Ewing led Georgetown to third place, to a tie for third place in the Big East, while every other year under him, the Hoyas have been near the bottom of the standings. And with Georgetown's 5-11 start to this season, which includes being 0-5 in the Big East, you have to wonder if Ewing's time in his alma mater is coming to a close. Now, Big Patrick, and I think it's not a fault to a certain degree, but I think Big Patrick is trying to coach this Georgetown team kind of like his mentor John Thompson the second did. And I say that from the standpoint, and the fact is the way that John Thompson coached, which was tremendous and legendary, is not going to relate to the modern day player. And I mean, you think about John Thompson's heyday at Georgetown, and John Thompson II was more than just a coach. I mean, he was an icon, of course, but he was also a teacher and he was also a father figure. And he also knew those moments when it came to putting his arm around a player and when it also came to being the disciplinarian. I think, today's players are a little bit different from that as far as the disciplinary aspect. And I think Patrick has been unable to find that fine line. And that's just my opinion from an outsider's perspective. I could be wrong. Ewing has definitely failed to get the big time recruits from the DC area to come to Georgetown. And you figure that was a staple for the Hoya program under John Thompson II, as well as John Thompson III. You figure Maryland, DC, Virginia, Georgetown always consistently got those guys. And of course, it started when they got Patrick Ewing. And granted, Patrick Ewing was coming to them from the Boston area, but nonetheless, it was just a trickle down effect. Now Georgetown and their program, they're back to square one on that. Also, on top of that, Ewing's program has been decimated by the transfer portal. We've consistently seen kids play for Georgetown for a year or two, and the next thing you know, they're leaving and going to other teams. You look at it, and of course, the question is going to be, is there any way that Ewing can turn things around at Georgetown? I'm not sure because you look at it, Ewing is one of the greatest players in NBA history. Of course, he was on the 50 greatest players NBA team, 75th anniversary team, and I'm sure he'll be on the 100th and so forth. Obviously, the greatest player in the franchise history of the New York Knicks. But nonetheless, sometimes when you're a great player, it does not necessarily mean it's going to transfer to you being a great head coach. And unfortunately, for Ewing, he is finding that out the hard way. Now, due to Ewing's stature at Georgetown, because he is a legend there, I don't see them firing him. Of course, he has a guaranteed contract. And with that said, I don't see him resigning. More than likely, it's going to have to come down to a scenario where Georgetown's probably going to force him out, but and they'll pay him the money, but it's going to be one of those where when the press release reads, Georgetown and Patrick Ewing have mutually agreed to part ways. That's what it's going to come down to, and it's unfortunate because it didn't work out for Chris Mullen when he returned to St. John's. It didn't work out for Clyde Drexler when he went to Houston, and these were two of Ewing's dream team teammates. And both of all of these guys went back to their alma maters, and you were hopeful that it would provide a spark. But you think about Patrick Ewing going on the recruiting scene, these kids that Patrick is trying to recruit, they have no idea of who he was as a player. And if you go back and watch Patrick Ewing's time at Georgetown, he was one of the greatest players in NCAA history. Darn sure one of the greatest players in the Big East, in the history of the Big East. And I mean, I don't care what era you're talking about. If you want to talk about an all-time starting lineup for the Big East, Patrick Ewing has to be in that lineup. And then aside from what Ewing did at Georgetown, you think about what he did in the NBA for his career there, most notably with the Knicks. But these young kids nowadays have no idea about Patrick Ewing and the past accolades that he brings to the table. So obviously, it's one of those things that right now it's just a disservice for this program. And with that said, what will Ewing's fate be at Georgetown? I don't see a scenario at this point, the way that the Hoyas are playing. I don't see how anybody could bring Patrick Ewing back for next season. I think they'll let him finish out this year, barring something catastrophic. But you look at Georgetown right now, the only team that they probably have an opportunity to catch in the standings is DePaul. And I know it's still early. Seton Hall's 1-4 within the Big East. St. John's is 1-4. DePaul is 1-4. And then, of course, Georgetown is winless at 0-5. But nonetheless, I think at some point St. John's is going to get it going. At some point, I know Shaheen Holloway is in his first year at Seton Hall. They're going to pick up some wins. But for Georgetown right now, it just isn't there. And it's just unfortunate. You think about the history of this program, what this program has meant to the NCAA, what it's meant to the Big East for, of course, the original run of the Big East and the current run of the Big East. Obviously, Georgetown has not had the same success as it did once upon a time, but Georgetown is woven in the fabric that is the Big East Conference. So I look at it like this: when you think about what direction can and will Georgetown go in? For me, I think Georgetown is going to have to do something that they normally don't do, and that is go outside of the Georgetown family. And I say that because everything has been from the John Thompson umbrella for about 50 years now. Of course, John Thompson was the head coach of Georgetown from 72 to 99. He stepped down and made way for Craig Esherick, one of his longtime assistants. And then when Craig Esherick was let go, it was John Thompson the third, now Patrick Ewing. I think Georgetown's going to have to do something and go out of their family, if you will, to find their next head coach, because Georgetown, they've got to find a way to keep up in the Big East. You think about what Ed Cooley has done building his program at Providence, what Jay Wright did for so many years at Villanova. Xavier now has returned to Sean Miller. You think about Butler going with Thad Matta, Shaka Smart at Marquette, Greg McDermott at Creighton, Shaheen Holloway at Seton Hall, Mike Anderson at St. John's, Danny Hurley at UConn. You have not obviously they're not the iconic coaches from the original carnation of the Big East, but nonetheless, these are talented coaches that can get the job done. And it is a battle night in and night out in this conference. And if you're unable to keep up, you're going to find yourself in the current position that Georgetown is in. And it's not just that Georgetown is not winning games, they're not competing in games either. That is a big factor. So it's just unfortunate that, Patrick Ewing has not been able to get it done at Georgetown. And I think about that because I'm sure I don't know the man personally, but I'm sure that he loves his university. And, Georgetown was great to Patrick Ewing, and Patrick Ewing was great to Georgetown. And this is where the tough part is, because when you have a legend that has been a part of your team, whether it's on an amateur level, such as collegiately, or on the pro level, and it doesn't work out when he's the AD or he's the head coach or he's the general manager, it's never an easy scenario to try to go out there and move on. And that's unfortunately where Georgetown finds themselves. But I think at the end of the day, a resolution will come down. Obviously, they'll quote unquote mutually agree to part ways. And it's going to be in the best interest of the program going forward. Let's be realistic. Anybody else would have got let go from this position a long time ago. But it's just the fact that it's Patrick Ewing, his name has weight on this campus. And this is why, he has gotten the opportunity that he currently has in order to get things turned around. He's in his sixth year at Georgetown, and unfortunately, the results aren't there. And unless the Hoyas can do a complete 180, excuse me, which would be a miracle. I think Patrick Ewing's days as the head coach at his beloved alma mater, unfortunately, are numbered. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now, you can check it out, drop a line, and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off, saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.